Okay, hi everybody, and thank you for taking the time on this extremely hot day to spend a few moments inside to come to the Place seminar. So I do appreciate it. It's our last seminar of the year, so it's a really great pleasure to welcome Dr. Marga Munar, who is a lecturer at the Welsh School of Architecture. So Marga started her career in Spain at the University of Las Palmas and has taken a period in practice before doing a PhD at Cardiff University and joining the Welsh School of Architecture as a lecturer in architecture and urbanism, and really thinking about the boundary between those two disciplines. Currently, she's on a sort of a teaching and scholarship contract, and so obviously that informs a lot of the stuff that we're going to see today. So it's a real pleasure to introduce Marga and to welcome her to talk about placemaking of territories in Treherbert. Before I leave it to her, just a few little pieces of housekeeping. I've turned the recording on, so just to let everybody know that it's being recorded. And as is typical with these, we will, if you have any questions, please just ask them into the chat, or if you can also raise your hand and I can unmute you if you'd like to ask a question from that perspective. So with that, thank you, Marga. I'm going to turn myself off and away you go.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you very much for inviting me to your institute to deliver this talk. My work has been very much for many years in placemaking, starting with my teaching, but then after my PhD, and now carry on teaching at different level, but also as well touching on this. I am going to, I titled the lecture as Placemaking of Territories in Treherbert, and we are going to very much focus in the term of territories. I hope that I will be on time with the presentation, that we have time for a discussion at the end of the talk. Where does it come from, this research and this work that I am going to present? First of all, that is a work that is very much at the beginning of it. I started it about a year ago, and it started it because I had the possibility to do a design project with the students in Treherbert. And I think Treherbert is very much what it made me think about the idea of using territories to frame the work. Let's remember that this is a student project, and at the end of the presentation, we are going to see some of that. We can see on the screen already that we have, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but I would just point it out. There is in here a map of Treherbert and its territory that is very much defined by its watershed, its topography with the river in the middle. Treherbert has been changing quite a lot, and we can think that it has been going through different territories, that changes, it had changed its landscape, it had changed where the people they have been contained living within. They are in a valley, which it gives that sense of being inside of something. And we know that prior what is the image we have on the left of the industrial landscape of Treherbert, we had what it was agriculture, but then after that, the majority part of the land, it became on the hands of the private in order to do mining of coal. Therefore, the landscape now we have nowadays of Treherbert is very much a post-industrial landscape. Later on in the 1980s, we had all that area going very much for planting trees, and the landscape completely changed. However, now we are in a moment that Treherbert is thinking about what do they want to to be, who they want to be, what is their identity, for whom is that landscape, who can use that landscape, who can access it, which are the values that they want to live with, and which are the values then they are going to be implemented physically as well on the area. Therefore, the project very much come from there. And there is as well the Welcome to Our Woods, who they have already started that process of thinking about it, reimagining Treherbert for a long, for future of 50 years, 100 years, 200 years, very much the long-term vision for Treherbert. And they are on the endeavor of land transfer to the community, therefore very much working with the term of a stewardship of the land, and that's what means. Therefore, that again, it's something he has shaped this project and it's shaping this research. How I approach it to that, seeing that Treherbert was changing quite a lot in terms of his territory and becoming something quite different every time, then is what it made me think and wanted to work with territory. And later on, we'll see as well why there is another reason of that. And when we talk about territory, it's a very loaded term. It's a term that it has been contested. It's a term which it has some negative connotations. And we can see on the left-hand side that you can look to the political map of Europe. However, you can look as well that lines perhaps there is another territory, which is about the Mediterranean Sea, which things that will be very different where we are basing our eyes to which of that territories we are looking at. And the other one is on the right-hand side that very much comes from the understanding of territory, from the act of inhabiting, and very much so the act of occupying. And this act of occupying comes with and relates to possession, relates to control, relates to negotiation. While the one on the left, we could maybe look more to a definition coming from political geography, that it looks to a territory being material, being spatial, but also as well is about the links between people, links of the people with its environment. It could be natural, but it could be as well built environment. Is very much about the relationship between the community and the habitats, but also as well the community and the other places around. In here, there are a few things in that definition that I am interested with that I will unpack later on. And then, knowing that I am interested in that project in Treherbert, I am interested in what is the territories and how the territory of Treherbert is going to change through time. I would like to organize or structure this talk in 4 different parts. First, just a little bit of an introduction about where I come from, my thinking, and how I move from working with limits and boundaries to territory. Then after, I would like to talk about the territory and that notion of territory. Not that easy. It will be quite patchy, but I hope it will help to identify an approach from which we can look to the point 3, which will be the experimentation in Treherbert through a student project, and it will be illustrated through drawings by students. And then I will try to bring to light some of the learnings we've done, some of the learnings we reach from the project in relation to the theory. In terms of knowing a little bit about me, I am an architect and I am an urbanist. Therefore, for me, the interrelationship between different scales is very important. Is something that it frames my way of thinking. However, another thing it frames as well my way of thinking is that I think from and through the physical space, and it's very reductive. Of course, it's very reductive. And I think through the representation of that space, and you can see on that image in the middle of the boulevard, there is something added in there, which is what we call an inhabited plan and section, where it has the agents or the users of that spaces, which start to give a different understanding or bring a different dimension to a space. Therefore, it is from a physical space, but try to understand why and how are the social patterns, economics, and so on. And another one is the thinking visually and thinking with the typical tool of the figure ground very much used in urban design, but it's very much about giving me the possibility of always looking for complementary views. There is a view of something that you look from one lens and it gives you one understanding, but when you change the lens, then there is a different understanding, which that as well goes hand in hand with the multi-scale approach. Then another type of thinking and a theory that I think it had shaped my way of thinking and looking at things is Cullen's work. He was an architect where in the 1960s, he published the book of Concise Typescape, very much in the same time of the Death of the City by Jacobs, and very much on the same time scale of Kevin Lynch, The Image of the City. For me, what is important about this book and that author is his kinetic approach to architecture or to understanding the city. We don't live in a position that we are static, sitting down. We are all the time on the move. And when we are moving, then we are starting to correlate with the here and the there, and perhaps sometimes even the over there. And when you have a here and a there is a limit in between those. There is a boundary between that two different places. And that is the way I think we see the world also, as well. It relates to the architects and urbanists, that when we talk about the foreground, the middle ground, and the background, and how that informs on the way we design and the way we look at things. And of course, that image all the time is changing. Therefore, that foreground, middle ground, and background is all the time changing. And then to be in the city is to be in a theater that is all the time moving along. Another thing it has framed my thinking, and that it has been on the PhD, the one before as well, is the understanding of the boundary by Heidegger, who thinks about the boundary about something. Where something it doesn't stop is where something begins, and he is where the essential it starts to unfold. And I think it has quite a lot to do with Cullen understanding of moving around, but to define that here, there, and over there, that always there is that horizon, that line in there that we are looking at and we can perceive. And that it was something. It's a sentence, but it's something that it had made me think a lot, but also as well, it brought me to do quite a lot of studies in terms of thick descriptions of places, and then after to illustrate that description through photography, but also as well diagrams from sketches and photographs. Building more on that, and that again relates to, is based on the PhD, is that the work by Trias, a philosopher who died now, I think it was 2013, who taught in the School of Architecture. I imagine I could relate to his work because he could relate and he could talk about a space and use perhaps a little bit the language of the architect. And he defined the philosophy of the limit. And there were certain passages in there that in relation to what is a boundary and the boundary from where you can understand things and from where the essence of things they start to emerge. It had, I think, shape again my way of thinking. Also as well, the work by Casey, that is very much related in place, but also as well the work by Malpass and other authors that they are very much on that vein, if you like. On the right hand side, there is a little bit of work of the meeting point of the water and the sand, or the place where the water disappears on the edge of a stream, and me trying to understand what is that boundary, and that boundary understood not as a single strong line, but is a number of lines, and is a boundary that is inhabited, that is a boundary that has a space, is a boundary that fluctuates, is a boundary that it has a sort of symmetry, but is dynamic and it changes through time. Then why the territory has emerged, I think, is because of three different reasons. We talk about Treherbert, that Treherbert is changing its territory, therefore that it comes to my mind, despite the fact of being a quite conventional term, perhaps, and as I said, very loaded. But also as well, perhaps a way of trying to avoid to talk about the space and place, place and a space, they are two terms that they have been in my past work, and I think I needed a little bit of a different lens through which to assess things. But also as well, they are terms that they are extremely loaded. They are terms that they have a lot of research behind them, and it's quite difficult to navigate through that. But also as well, then after to apply that to students and to identify frameworks from where they can work with it is quite challenging. The same I found with the term boundary. Is a very primitive term in a sense, but it's something that is embedded in our being. It relates to the threshold, it relates very much to the liminal. It's something that we are not aware, but is part of our normal life. And because it's that obvious, I think it becomes quite difficult for students to work with it. And I think the term place is slightly the same. Perhaps now it has been overused, and each of us, we mean different things when we use that terms. Perhaps another reason it would be that Regenti says that the territories and boundaries should be framed as two aspects of the same phenomenon. Therefore, I think I am moving into what is territory, just in order to explore a different lens of the boundary. Therefore, it seems perhaps that I am moving quite a lot, but I don't think that is the case. In terms of territory, I already mentioned Gottman's definition in political geography, where it says that territory is understood as a material and a spatial notion, establishing links between people and the natural setting, and is particularly related to a twofold relationship between the community and its habitat and the community and its neighbors. In here, we can see that relationship is something very important. Perhaps even we'll reach later on that territory, it could be defined by the relationships, but also as well in here, there is an understanding that territory, it encompasses different scales. It doesn't work just in one scale. And of course, territory implies a space, but not always. And also as well, not every space is a territory in itself. In order to be territory, it needs to be an appropriation of a certain group or people of that spaces. And it has to do with rules, and it has to do with values. Many authors now, they are looking or moving into the term values. As rules, it becomes something quite, it's quite negative, it's very imposing. But at the end of the day, it's about that values that they are applied to a piece of land or to a space. And it's for the occupants to take that values. And it's for that values and that rules, they are about helping the behavior and helping the relations between the people, but also as well is about protecting that portion of a space. And I think that of protecting nowadays, it becomes very relevant. We have, because of the climate crisis, there is a lot of protection. And despite the fact as we want to be quite free, looking for values that they are co-created, co-design, co-define and accepted and identified by the communities, we usually need to work with other levels of territory, if you like, that it works at different scales, where there are rules or there are values that we need to follow in order to protect that spaces in relation to the situation we have been facing. Territory is legitimized by the process of contesting, negotiating, accepting the rules and the values. And it's something that it happened over time. And there are authors that they talk about the deterritorialization, reterritorialization, and so on. Not perhaps one of them, it would be Deleuze and Guattari, but in here in this talk, I am not referring to their work, possibly will be something that I will look into in the future. The territory is political, is constructing, is socially constructed, and is temporal. I think it's very important to think about it as a process, and is all the time changing, sometimes very slowly, sometimes in incremental ways, and sometimes it does it in a big time. And it has to do with, involves different scales. One territory mainly will sit in one scale, but it will refer and will relate to and will exist at many other scales. Therefore, it's about the nested scales territories, and it's something that I am very interested with, about how that different scales, they are coexisting, and it makes the term of territory relational and complex. Carry on with the term of territory. We know that it generated through different actors. It can be individual, it can be groups who territorialize that space. And that means it's about attributing social values and personal values to that spaces. We can see that Eldon tells us, well, Rafestein, sorry, tells us that we need to understand territory through representation, appropriation, and control. However, the territory is not an option, it is not an object, the outcome of actions conducted towards it. That is, it's a process in itself, it's made and is remade. It's very dynamic. And in here, we can start thinking about place and thinking about territory, but in relation or contrast with place. In the slide before, I didn't mention where on the slide we had Duarte's book on space, place, and territory. These are three terms that they are very complex and they coexist all together. But each of them, they have a remit. Despite the fact of being interrelated, it doesn't mean that they are interchangeable. And we know that, or it seems that a place and territory, they have underneath it as a foundation what is a space, or they are framed in some way by a space. And in both cases, it's about providing attributes, personal and social values. But then the territory is demarcated by values and is governed by who occupies it. Therefore, there is a distinction between place and territory. In territory is the added moment where is occupied, and that occupation brings a sense of control or negotiation that perhaps in place is there, but at a different level or intensity. The process of producing place is centripetal. It goes to the center. It tries to unify when the territory seems that it does the opposite. For place, it requires that the values they are accepted by and shared by the people who use it as a spaces. Whereas in territory, it requires that others respect them. It's a little bit more impose, if you like, and I think that is where it comes some of the controversies around the term. And there is a process of involving and there is a process of inclusion in place and territory, but at the same time there is inclusion, there is exclusion. At the moment there is somebody included, there is somebody excluded, or at the moment there is a space or a space with certain characteristics that is included, it will be others that they will be excluded. Territory is at the end of the day is an instrument for ordering social relations, and if focus, if you want to be positive about it, is about inclusivity. And inclusivity in relation as well of tolerance is about sharing, but tolerate and accept. But in many cases, it will be a relation that there is a dominance, that not all the agents will be on the same level. Also as well, one of the things we learned from Briganti is that they are different type of territories, and this seems that they are defined by by the times and how they are changing. He talks about fixed situational and movable territories. And these are influenced by the functions, and these are in relation to how the different scales their work, but also as well there is a degree of visibility attached to them. And boundaries define territories. That is what Duarte says. That is what Haabruggen also says. But Haabruggen makes a subtlety within that he says that not all the boundaries they are territorials, and he refers to fences, for example, in fields, that perhaps sometimes they are not about separating or territorial in the sense that is about excluding and including, or about specific values provided or attributed to one portion, to each of the portions from each side of that boundaries. And it seems that when we are talking about is a process of in the territory defined very much of the process, it seems that, and it's about the also as well the territory through occupation, and is about the dynamics that they come with the negotiation and the contestation. It seems that it very much relates to the subterm of territoriality, and the origins of this term came much later than territory, but also as well it relates to the animal behavior, and it comes from ethology. And when we talk about territoriality, it seems two different ways of approaching it, and probably in here we are looking to the combination of both of them. One is being historical, collective, and ancestral, thinking that is intuitive as part of the nature of the beings. And that contrasts with the ones they think that is rational and strategically activated. For the study we have done, we have combined both understanding. Probably they come from that initial understanding of the territory of that two very different scales, one from a more geographic scale, that at the beginning, and just at the beginning, and probably that is a very quick reason into it. It comes from that larger scale and that bigger aspects and being less physical, while the other definition that it comes from occupation and inhabitation, thinking that territory is implied with that, then it will say that they are that combination of both of them. If we are moving into the field of architecture, one of the books that it has been useful has been the book by and the work by Simon Unwin. And he, in conjunction with Haabruggen, talks about occupation and talks about inhabitation and how these things they directly relate to territory. He talks about, we can see on the middle of this slide, that there is a child drawing a line. And in there, the reflections that Simon make is, I can define my place by drawing boundaries. By drawing this circle, I define my own threshold, my own horizon. I feel more secure, stronger, which it is about as well. Then after it brings us to a different level when you talk about control, and security is one of that aspects that all the cultures we are looking for, all the individuals we are looking for. Also as well is about the actively occupying a space. And he very much uses the term place. It doesn't use the term territory, but his reflections very much relate and help me and the students to think about territory. When we talk about territoriality, one of the other things that come to mind is the work by Edward Hall, not an architect, but he talked about the intimate space, the different spaces that relates to that negotiation and what we feel comfortable to be next to one person or another. We know that distances, they are defined culturally. Depends on the culture, then a personal space, it will be tighter or it will have more space. But in all the cultures, it seems that this understanding and that feeling is there. And that it relates to territoriality. The other work which has been interesting to look at is the work by Haaland, a Dutch architect. And he's very much interested in the social aspects of a space and about how there is a social order in using these spaces, and he's looking for that social patterns that they can define or they can inform a spatial patterns. These days, sometimes they are not the same. He does a good reflections about architecture built in the 1800s and before the modernism period, where functioning wasn't at the front of the design. What it was at the front of the design, it was the attributes and the qualities of the spatial qualities of the spaces. And that the spaces, what they wanted to do is to support inhabitation, therefore the inhabitation and then the occupation of being active within that space. It was down to the user. And of course, that it takes him to understand that when we build, we exercise control. However, the person who uses that space, the user or the agent, then also as well has control. And because it has control, is able or it transforms it uses it on the way it wants, and it can change it. He refers about patterns, as I say, and he moves from the structure of the dwelling to the structure of the block and then to the public space. Therefore, he does studies that they cross many different scales. And then finally, the work by Bobik on his book between the edges. I find it very interesting. He doesn't talk about territory again. He talks about, and he's interested about what does define urbanity. And in order to do that study, what he does is to look to the in-between the public realm and the private realm. He looks to the boundary between the pavement and the inside of housing in dense areas. With that is an inhabited, look to the inhabitation of a boundary of two different domains, they are coming together. And that is very interesting that his reflections, they are very much in line to the concept of territory. His work is very much intersected, or it has an intersection, or an intersection could be done with the work of Haaland, but also as well with the work by Sennett, where Sennett does a lot of urban cultural studies, and he looks to the public realm into the inside. He approaches that behavior usually from the public into the private. And now we are going to move on to talk about what has happened or what is happening to Treherbert and how the students they have been planning, thinking about territories in Treherbert and how they have been proposing a new architecture of territories. It seems that Treherbert has gone through the dynamics of territory, through the different stages of different territorializations. And we can see that in the last phase that they already started is about the community transfer. And you can see on that mapping here, it indicates the different forests that forestry, forestation, they are different types that they would like to take on and to be managed by the community. And the community has, of course, always that thinking about the future, not the near future, but the long-term future, that it brings very different questions and it brings different challenges than if you are looking to what is the outcome in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years time. If you are looking to longer term and you think about, again, about the climate crisis, in the way you work, it becomes very, very different. The students, they were asked to start their studies looking into an animated persona, an inanimated persona. They could choose from whatever they wanted it. The idea was very much about thinking from the agent, not from the space. Thinking from the agent, that the agent, it reveals the spaces and the qualities of that spaces and the patterns of use of the agents, instead of what are the patterns that the spaces they are providing, which that will be the case if we start from the space. Therefore, that it was the idea that they had to start with a persona. We had students look into the hedgehog, cat, dogs, so on. And the animated personas, inanimated, we look at them as well, because they are the ones, they cross different scales, but also as well is the ones they are framing what is the locality where we are. And they look into the resources, water, energy, and government. Therefore, now what we are going to look into is to see some of the studies they've done in relation to the animated and inanimated persona. Then on the second phase of the project, they had to come with a manifesto which embedded values in their project based on these studies. Therefore, these animated and inanimated personas as well, they were a way of producing an analysis of Treherbert, not perhaps a conventional one, but to think from the agents of that place. And then they had to propose from there that manifesto, and that brought out design objectives, and then from there they had to identify strategies and then building. And we are going to very much look into the to the level of strategies. Yeah. In here we have an inanimated persona. We can think about the history of Treherbert and is how he has gone through the different stages where require different type of territorialization. And we can see on the right hand side how through time there were different things implemented in there where territory was changed. But also as well, another exercise that it was very interesting is to see how the territory of Treherbert, it wasn't just based on Treherbert. Parts of Treherbert, part of the cold, was going to different parts of the world. Therefore, that territory, that cold, that CO2 emission, it was going to many different parts of the world, not constrained. In here we have the study of the energies, and we have the wind energies that you can see that it goes to the larger scale, but also as well an understanding of how the energies they are somehow visible in Treherbert, which that is one of the authors what was saying that there is a scales, there are different scales in territory, involved in territory, but also as well the territories that will be more or less visible depending on that scale. The larger the scale, the more visible it is, the smaller it is, the less you see the traces of the territory. And here there were some studies about the woodland, and the woodland, of course, seeing it as a system, as something that it cannot be looked into just a portion of a space. Then there is the territory of the woodland of all Wales, but then after of the different areas, but then after of the different type of depending on the type of trees. And one of the things as well, Regenti says, is that territory doesn't need to be continuous. It could be discontinuous, which is a difference with place. And that I think is one of that examples that any forest that is in Treherbert is part of a bigger system, a bigger scale, a bigger picture. We had a student when we moved into the animated personas who look into the trees, and we understood that the trees, they are creating their territories made by allowing for certain trees to be near them. Not all the trees, they allow for any tree to be around. There is a territory that is made of certain type of trees, and they are trees that they allow and they support other trees, or they support certain type of insects or even funguses. And that is one of the elements, is a student study that she reached this fungus that it was on the roots of the trees and is beneficial. The tree is allowing for the fungus to live, but also as well, the fungus allows for the tree, to the health of the tree. And in that process of the tree, allowing for other trees to be near, to be part of its territory, it's excluding others. The student looked into the ELSA, and it was very clear that there are certain trees that they never will be near to it, but they are others. And then there is an ecology attached of biodiversity and macro biodiversity around that specific trees, which creates what is a territory which that happens then in nature. Another student looked to a butcher who was traveling to Treherbert. Therefore, the student looked into what is the territories that Van was creating on the moment it was happening. He was there. And he came with his own territory, his van, and his van was projecting a wider territory in here. And you can see it as well in here that different people, they will relate, but it will be certain boundaries between where the butcher is, but how that relationship happens and how that changes as well through time. As well, the butcher has itself a territory or territories, and the butcher, territory that he goes to different places to sell his meat every day of the week. He intersects and juxtaposes with the territories at least of that towns, but the territories of different people and different individuals. Which that brings again different elements of that aspect of territory and territoriality. We had a student look into fish and chip and how it was the overlapping of two different domains of the residential above of the commercial one, but how as well then inside of even the commercial, it will be areas and negotiating and boundaries where the visitor or the customer can go to, and where the assistant will be selling, and where the rules they change as well on the line, the counter line. There is a moment where things and rules, they are different. Therefore, they are rules when we inhabited the space, rules within even the home of families. But also as well, it took that the students to look to what it is the territory of the fish and chip they are selling, that this is embedded as part of that premises, and that another drawing on that side. We had the studies of the hedgehog, and it's about the negotiation of what happened during the day and what happened during the night. Is an animal that is just there during the night, and how maybe you can see in here how it's contested, that line and that boundary, that very thin line. And it took him to do, the students to do a lot of studies in relation to the shadows, but also as well the role of the particles between gardens, private gardens, for that animal. Then we had somebody who looked into a dog, and for her it was for Priyanshi it was very important that the study she did in here, that she was looking to how occupation it creates that territory, how the person who is reading, it has that area that is defined by her body and her inhabitation in here, but also as well by the light and how much that light goes to where it goes, but also as well then it has a dog. And it's very important in how that ball, it becomes an area that it defines the area within which the dog can work. That the student as well did some reflection in relation to how the dog needed and was depending on the person, but sometimes wanted to be independent. And that is where we have the some studies about the coexisting, connection, dependent, which that they will be the basis of her project. And then in terms of the projects, we have Evie, who did the study of the trees, who ends up working with boundaries related to that fungus, that it's clear to her that is the territory, and the inside of the territory is very interesting, but where things becomes very productive, it's at the edges of that territories, at the edges of that points where there are exchanges of nutrients or exchanges of different things. And then she studied the different boundaries and how they are interrelated. And we have in here as well, she proposed a new material that it was produced by the miscellaneum. And from the miscellaneum, you can build blocks, you can build construction materials. Therefore, she defines a product where it can be part of construction, and that is part of her her program. And of course, that material that she's producing, it needs from the forest, but also as well, at the end of all the process, it gives something back to that forest. Therefore, it's very much in line to what it will be the intrinsic relation of Treherbert, of the urban area, with its wider landscape, of that landscape of the trees that it has been changing through time, which that is about nurturing it instead of perhaps seeing it as a source. And in here we can see that that to her to understand what it will be the opportunities of her building to create and to enhance the wider ecology and the wider biology. And then also as well looking to the building about how it's growing through time and how the territory changing. Another student who moved into the butcher's student done the reflection about, well, meat is not going to be something that we'll have very much in the future. It needs to be a change of farming. And again, that change of farming, it needs to be about nurturing the landscape as well as getting some economic profit from it. And you can see in here on the left-hand side that he identifies a circle of how the different resources, the different aspects, they need to be correlated within what happened through time, that we talk about circular design, that there isn't a production of waste, or waste even is included as part of that. And he uses spirulina as an added element as to help with the reduction of animals, but also as well with some, still have some animals in the farm, even if that very reduced, but that it has allowed the student to create a territory, and a territory that not only goes to his site, but also as well interacts with the wider scale of Treherbert. The student looking to the hedgehog, John, he went into the idea of the rhizome by the Luz and Watari, and he talks about different allotments, production of food, consumption of food, and how that is about the balance between them, and is a balance that it happen in a way, in a quite organic way, in a way that is very dynamic, and that is something that the rhizome can absorb, that there isn't the boundaries, and these are not visual. And then is the work of Prijansha, who look into the changes of Treherbert for at least 20 years, and how she was moving from being dependent to being controlling, but then to move to coexisting with the landscape, to be in a collaboration with the landscape, and perhaps even being ecocentric. Therefore, she established the different processes and in relation to how that they are going to grow. And that is about implementing more forestation, but also as well that comes with the function, which that has to do again. Brigenti says that in for territories to change and for territories to emerge, use a function, and a function, it will rebalance the existing functions and create and define the new territory. And with that, it comes a sense of belonging, but also as well, it comes a sense of identity. And in here, how she provides the different territories that it comes to different elements, how there is a view of that new material again on the city to create a new identity. We can see some drawings that she done at the beginning in terms of occupation that it helped her to define and to develop her architecture. And just reaching the end, I know we are very much at the end, just we are at 12:50, probably has taken too long. But some of the lessons we have learned is that territory has been understood as relational. And I think that is one of the things in the project it becomes quite clear, and is about the interrelationship, and is in the relation of that, for example, the skills or that aspect when becomes very, very important, or in that final project that we saw, it was the collaboration, and is in the collaboration, not in the functions that they are added in there, but is in the collaboration of what happened, where the territory can be seen and can emerge in a positive way. We talk about the importance of that function can facilitate territory, and how this can have the power of reorganizing what is the territory. And territory has been understood as a process. It is not a static. It's about territorialization through after reterritorialization, and sometimes even it goes to deterritorialization and then go back again. But what is about enabling to generate, is about thinking about projects in a way that you are allowing for accommodating change, accommodating adaptation, being flexible. In the project is understood as the system is active, and they are interrelated with other systems. You cannot see a territory as an isolation. You need to see it as part of a bigger part. And within a territory, you have different systems, and it's about that interrelation between the different systems. It's about the ecology that you are forming, but also as well the term of territory, because there is a process, and it's a process that never going to stop. It's something that allows you to think in a long term. It's allow you to think about what they will be the outcomes, not today, but to think about the outcomes much later on, which the decision you make, they are very different if that they are done in short term. And you can reflect on what is the impact, positive or negative. And I would like just to end the talk thanking very much these students who had been heroic on the way they have been working this year, but also as well we had a number of people coming to assess the student work and contributing to the discussion. Some of them they have been external to the Cardiff University, others have been part of Cardiff University. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Marga. It was really interesting.
Sorry about rushing in certain areas.
That's okay. That's okay. That's what happened. So, if anybody has questions, just add them to the chat or raise your hands. Sorry, let me get myself arranged and organized here. So I guess you know, as somebody who's not too sort of familiar necessarily with a lot of the theory here, I guess, you know, how do you see using the students' work to actually better inform or to build better solutions for Treherbert? What do you see as sort of the action or the activity that will sort of help with that?
Well, at the moment we are putting a publication together of the student projects that it will go to Treherbert. It's at the end of the day is how we understand as well, and the values that we put to community engagement, and we learn a lot. It's a two-way relationship with them, because they are framing the way we think, and we think through them in many cases, but now is about as well to give them the work, and then they can do it, they can use it to provoke their thinking, to maybe rethink some of their thoughts. They can use some of the research there for them to go deeper into that. But that is what we are going to do, is to pass on the project. The other thing we are planning doing before September is to go to the community and just to ask the community, do they have anything to say about the projects in relation to, not for us to tell them these are the projects for Treherbert or how the Treherbert should move on. We are not the right people for that, but to be provocateurs, that perhaps it helps them to understand more, or just to question or to think about what they want as a future. The student project, they are just a student project. And that is the beauty of them, that we can go deep in certain conceptual thinking, but then we are not in the power or in the place to impose it on them. It's just about sharing. That is what we want to do.
Yeah, oh, it's really interesting. So there's a question here from Anna. It's a technical question, so I can answer that one pretty quickly. So how can you access the recording afterwards? So after this, this will get uploaded to the Sustainable Places website. Usually it takes us, a few days or up to a week to get this on. So yeah, so just keep an eye on that. Or if you'd like a copy of the recording, just maybe send us an email and we can make sure that we get it to you when it's there. So hopefully that answers your question, Anna. And then we have a question here from Nick. So the question is, how do the community respond?
We don't know, because this year, we don't know. We had, as part of the reviews, we had Ian Thomas, who is the person from Welcome to Our Woods, and we had as well Chris Blake, who came to Youth Institute to give a talk about Treherbert, but also as well the report of the Skyline that he has framed this project, and they both have been as part of in conversation with us, and they are very aware of the work. Therefore, I think he's informing some of their thinking in an informal way, which for me is the best that can happen. However, as I said, is because part of it is because of the lockdown. We couldn't have more engagement with the public, which perhaps it will be different next year. I don't think it's about how we tell them what to do. The thing, as I said before, is about sharing with them our thinking, our explorations. And I think what it would be ideal is next year, perhaps the animated person is a person of Treherbert, that somebody can shadow or can work or can talk to a person from there, that they discover Treherbert through the eyes of a person in Treherbert, that they get that relationship with that. And I know that will be just probably a person, but at least is somebody who is from that environment and from that ecology. You are muted.
There we are. It's the first time I've done that, so that's not bad. So we've just sort of, I guess we're at time now. So I just wanted to say thank you again from us. Being the last on the list, and it being such a hot day, it's been really interesting and enjoyable to hear about your work. So yeah, and so just to say to everybody that's here, thanks for supporting the seminar series through the term, and just to say that we'll be starting up again with a slightly different format next year. So please check your emails, and we will send you an email soon enough with the new sort of format for how we're going to do things. And please, really thank you for your engagement in the seminar series, and we hope to see you again next year. And again, Marga, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very, very much. And please, anybody, if you have questions or if you want to post suggestions or challenge some of the things, you are very welcome to contact me. It will be great. Brilliant. Yeah. Thank you very much for having me.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.